Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good, and how are you?
I'm good, thank you. My name is Karabo, and your name is?
I'm Morocco.
Morocco. Where are you from, Morocco?
Here's a view.
Hazyview. All right. Pleased to meet you, Morocco. Thank you as well for booking with me to do the panorama route. So from here, we're gonna drive for about an hour and a half to get to. We pretty much will be on the panorama route, but the main viewpoint is the three roundabouts of the Blade River Canyon, right? So along the way, I'll be pointing other things, especially potholes, as well as the other attractions like the Pinnacle, as well as the God's Window. And then finally, we arrive at Blade River Canyon, or the three roundabouts, and then we'll have a bit of a chat when we get there. And I'll give you a few minutes, I'll explain a few things, and then give you a couple of minutes to take pictures if you are interested. Is that good? Are you ready to go?
Oh, yeah.
Lovely. Let's do this. Right, so this route takes you to God's Window. So when you look on the left and right, you actually have these pine plantations. You also have eucalyptus plantations. Right, so if you go up on the God's Window, what you're actually doing is you're going through a series of viewpoints, particularly having or finding the right spot or angle to view this beautiful surrounding, right? The background of the panoramic view of all these plantations, right? When you actually go back, these pine plantations, eucalyptus plantations, they're actually of course, there are alien plant species which were brought about back during the colonial era, particularly to actually supply the demand for timber, for wagons, and all of that, right? Which was the main mode of transport back in those days. Of course, now it's used to make paper, to make timber for our roofs and all of that. Yeah. So when you go up here, you're just pretty much going through a series of viewpoints. These, of course, today they thrive because of the climate in this area, Mpumalanga. It's very beautiful. This is the one place in South Africa where we have the most plantations or pine eucalyptus plantations in the whole country, right? You do have other places where you can actually find eucalyptus pine plantations, as well as other parts of Africa itself, right? Just to name one would be Malawi, right? But of course, Malawi does it on a very small scale, particularly just to supply the demand around the East African community. Anyhow, most of our natural indigenous forest was actually wiped out to give way to these plantations, right? When you get to the Blade River Canyon, actually supports array of plant life, because you actually, or even animals, right? The flora and fauna. Also, when you look there, you actually have the montane forest, which then makes the Blade River Canyon an area in which multiple biomes come together. All right. So when you look at this, you see them pretty much in most parts of the country where the climate almost is like this. You can see the weather here. At the moment, we have overcast, a little bit of haze. Hence, Hazyview is named. The name haze is because of this. It's like mist, it's like smoke. You don't really know what you're seeing. But yes, so that's pretty much it. So the climate here is very suitable for this. I guess that's why Mpumalanga has a lot of eucalyptus and pine plantations, right? You do have Sapi, you have Mondi, you have MTO that have actually established their farms here. Yeah, so God's Window, that's where you go. It's God's Window, particularly because you get to the highest point and then you have this panoramic view of the surrounding area. Thank you. Three roundabouts, because we call them roundabouts, right? Of course, every tribe will have their own name for that, but the prominent one, across all cultures, is roundabouts. Especially if you look at the furthest one on the right, it definitely still has like that toppy thing at the top. which resembles our traditional round huts. We'll talk a little bit about why our people actually used huts. The main thing was, of course, for ventilation purposes. Whatever air that came in, whether it's to freshen up, whether it's the heat in the winter. Remember, we actually used to have fire in the middle. So you had fire, so that the heat was circulating around the house. Anything, especially snakes, right? Villages were set up. Our people lived in harmony with Mother Nature, wildlife. So with that, snakes. When a snake enters a house, it actually they like dark areas, dark and moist areas. A lot of time is the corners. So this round level, because it doesn't have a corner, right? So the snake will enter through the door and then go around looking for a corner. The first corner it finds, it's the door again. So it actually goes out. So that's how they were able to avoid snake bites from in the house, right? And also if there's a cooling breeze, it actually goes and circulates around the hut, therefore cooling everyone. So yeah, so that's that. And anyway, so three rondavas, also known as the three sisters. Of course, those represent a local king's wife, right? Hoshi Maripi, Maripi Mashile, who was a Pulana chief, actually became famous during a war where he actually became victorious. This is the Battle of Moholoholo against the invading Swazis. Right, Swazis are Swazi people from our neighboring country, Eswatini today, right? Which used to be a British protectorate of Swaziland, right? So of course they've renamed the country to Eswatini. So the invading Swazis actually wanted to take over this area, right? And Hoshi Chief Maripi, together with the Chilwane, as well as the Mohlalas Bapedi tribe, a clan to which I belong, right? So they sourced help from the Bapedi tribe so that they actually can defeat the Swazis. And some of the boulders were actually rolled down to crush the enemy, right? It is still said that if you look at the bottom, if you go searching, you'll still find some of the skeletons from the Swazi people. This actually goes to date or tells about how we are actually able to find Swazi people in the area, because back in the days, if you actually lost a battle, right, if you are sent on a mission and you lost, you wouldn't go back, because going back means you'd get killed. You failed on a mission. So therefore most people settled here. They found refuge, and that meant they had to submit to the culture, to the rule of the Mapulana people, right? So the peaks will represent, or the round hearts will actually represent the three wives of Hoshi Maripi, right? Which are Mogola Dikwe, Magabolle, as well as Maseroto. All right. So those are the three sisters. Anyway, also you don't get confused, because in the Northern Cape they do have features which are also known as the three sisters, right? Hence this one, the most used name or acceptable name is the three rondavels, right? Three rondavels, that's the other name for the Blade River Canyon, right? So when people say, hey, we're going to the Blade River Canyon, this is where they're coming. The canyon itself will run all the way from the potholes, right? We have Berg's Luck potholes, which actually you find them at the confluence of the Treyer as well as the Blade River, right? Remember the name Blade River Canyon, because the river which flows here is actually known as the Blade River, right? Direct translation would mean the river of happiness, or the joyous river, right? Now this was named by the four trekkers under the leadership of Hendrik Potgieter, right, during the fourth trekker expedition, right? This is a time where Dutch people actually left the Cape Colony and were on their way to Delagua Bay, Delagua Bay, different people call it different names. This is present day Maputo Bay, right? Now, this is, let me pause you there, just pause you there for a second, about the Blade River, because it goes hand in hand with the Tria River, where the two rivers meet. That's where you find potholes. Tom Berg, and an explorer, actually believed that he could find alluvial gold, right? And he went searching for the gold, alluvial gold, and believing that he could find something. He did find something magical, which is the potholes, right? Over years, thousands and thousands of years, millions of years, the two rivers, the swelling movement, right? Remember, where the two rivers meet, you start to have a swelling movement of the water, and then they actually drilled the rocks, and over time became huge potholes. So huge boulders of potholes, right? So hence the name potholes. And then that's where you then have the Trier River. This is a river of sadness, right? Again, four-tracker expedition. They lost their way to Delagoa Bay, and then Hendrik Potgieter and his party, especially the gentleman, actually left on horseback to try and charter a way through to Delagoa Bay, right? Because they were gone for such a long time, and so their families that they left behind at the banks of the Trier River believed that they had lost their husbands, brothers, and that then the river was actually known as the river of sadness, or the river of sorrow, right? Or the mourning river, because they were mourning their loved ones, right? This was cemented again by the Hendrik Potgieter party again when the guys came back to try, and after they had found their way to Delagoa Bay, they came back to fetch the others that they had left behind. When they got back, they were not there, right? That cemented the river to say, oh, this is indeed a river of happiness, because we left our people here. Something must have happened to them. Nonetheless, they went searching, and then eventually they again found each other at the river, the Blade River, hence the banks of the Blade River, hence the name Blade, the river of happiness. When they found each other again, they were reunited. It was all happiness, right? Now, Blade River, the canyon itself, about 26 kilometers long. Of course, if you want to go a little bit deeper into geology, this is a geological feature, a historical feature as well. As I mentioned, the Battle of Moholoholo. Of course, when during that four-tracker expeditions, they did find, or they did encounter challenges or pushback from the local tribes. All right. So anyhow, you've got the peak at the top, which was also used as a refugee, right? This is during those days of the battle, right? The women and children, they were hidden or put there because then there was no enemy. And the mountain, the bottom, was used, of course, as a fortress where people, or the soldiers at the time, would actually defend whoever, their families, their crops, and everything at the top. All right. You still have some areas within or inside rocks where you've got caves, where you've got openings. You actually have a Tufa waterfall, right? So with the canyon itself, right, as I said, 26 kilometers long. It is the largest green canyon. It is the third largest canyon in the world, right? Africa has two of the largest canyons. The first one is Grand Canyon. The second one is Fish River Canyon, which you find in Hobart, Namibia. And then the third largest canyon is here, right? So which also makes it a world heritage site, right? Given the history, you still have areas, and life here dates back again to the hunter-gatherer era, where you had hunter-gatherers moving through here. You have this geological feature. Of course, those round peaks were formed during or with or by a process of many years of erosion as well as weathering, right? But canyons, mostly, if you go to East Africa, you have what we call the Rift Valley. Right? The Rift Valleys are caused by the movement of tectonic plates, right? The Great African Plates, the Nubian, the Somalian plates, when they interact with each other, that's what caused this, right? There was a volcanic activity here as well as tectonic activity, which caused a crack, and then of course causing the river, the Blade River, to actually carve its way down. And over years, over time, expanding and expanding. This is millions and millions of years, right? There's no dating or formal dating of when the canyon actually formed. But what is known is that the canyon is continuously expanding. Again, this is due to that erosion, weathering that keeps on happening. Yeah? Are we clear?
Yeah.
You have questions so far?
No.
No questions? All right. Yeah, but that's pretty much that. Of course, you've got a dam, which also serves as a catchment area. This is a catchment area now. That is where the canyon ends, right? We've got the Rift Valley in East Africa, which ends all the way in Zambia. We have Namibia as well with the Fish River Canyon. It also happened again with the same process of volcanic as well as tectonic movements, right? And then the Fish River itself carving through some of that metamorphic rock. So the rock types you see here, you've got sandstone, which becomes the weaker material. So that's what eroded from those. That's why today we are left with the round peaks. So the weak material eroded away, leaving the hard quartzite, which is the major or the most rock we find here. All right, the rock formation that we find here becomes the quartzite, right? So it becomes a bit hard and it's not easy to erode as sandstone. You do have conglomerate, you have shale as well here, you find shale and gneiss, right? I mentioned a little bit about sandstone. Sandstone, so you have three types of rock formations, right? Or three types of rocks, right? You've got the igneous rock, which forms in two ways. You have intrusive, you also have extrusive. A good example here, which we also find, which tells us that indeed there was a volcanic experience or the activity here, is the basalt rock, right? Basalt is another form of extrusive igneous rock, whereas you have intrusive igneous rock, which then becomes granite. So you have both of these rock types here. You also have gneiss. Gneiss is actually a metamorphic rock type. Yeah, so we do have a concoction of pretty much everything. You also have a conglomerate. Conglomerate is actually a good example of sedimentation. Sediments deposited into a body of water or something. Could be under the soil. That's why in other areas, especially Namibia, we also have what is known as the petrified forest. This is large trunks of wood which actually have turned to rock. This is through a process called silicidification. Right, you do have the same process where it's called instant petrification, where you have mud mixing with other, let's say for example, bones of animals, right? And during that instant petrification, they actually become one and become rock. So in other places you have Hornfels rock, which is actually said to be fossilized parts, right? Fossilized body parts, could be from humans, could be from animals, during or through that process called an instant petrification. You have evidence of this if you go further into Barberton, go further into Waterval Boven. All these plantations that we were talking about, some of them wiped out this, which is like ancient stone circles, right, which gives evidence that there was once vanished, or there is an ancient vanished civilization that existed before us. Right. Now, without going too deep into that, right, that's a conversation for another day. I'm going to open up again for questions. If you have anything that you want to know about this area, if you have anything that you'd like me to add, maybe I left something, maybe you just are interested in something about this area, you feel free to ask. You're good? Yeah, but otherwise, that's about it. Whatever more, feel free to ask at any given time. I promise you I don't know everything, but I do promise you that whatever I don't know, I'll research and I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.